I'd like to call the January 13th, 2015 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a regular session. Could we please start with a roll call?
Yes, Mayor Coombs.
Here.
Council members Bagley.
Here.
Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Levison.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Santos.
Here.
Mayor Coombs, we have a quorum.
Okay, let's stand for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at first call, public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have an opportunity to speak during the public hearing items this evening or at final call, public invited to be heard. So next we have the minutes from December 16th. Can I have a motion? Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move that we pass the minutes from that meeting. Second.
Okay, let's vote. That passes 7-0. Valerie, are there any agenda revisions?
Yes, Mayor Coombs, there are a couple. We are adding agenda item 6B under special presentations. It will be resolution 2015-02 supporting law enforcement associations, and I'll read the title of that when we get to it.
Okay.
And then also at your desk tonight, we placed the Planning and Zoning Commission minutes of 11/19. They should have been attached to item 8D. They are referenced in the communication, but that was missed in the packet itself. So that's it.
Okay. Is there a report from the city manager?
No report, Mayor, Council.
Okay, now it's time for special reports and presentation.
Your first item is a proclamation designating the week of January 19th through the 23rd, 2015 as All Cultures, One Voice, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through Action Week in Longmont. And I believe you have the resolution, and then Stella Woodley is here to accept it.
I'll go ahead and read the resolution. A proclamation designating the week January 19th through the 23rd, 2015 as All Cultures, One Voice, honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through Action Week in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas January 19th, 2015 marks Dr. Martin Luther King holiday, on which we honor the civil rights work of Dr. King and countless supporters who sacrificed to sow the seeds for a movement of peace, equality, and justice for all, and we commemorate the universal unconditional love, forgiveness, and nonviolence that empowers his revolutionary spirit. Whereas across the nation, throughout the state, and in the city of Longmont, honoring Dr. King has become a day of service to our communities, and whereas the events held here in Longmont are made possible by many volunteers from diverse backgrounds who have come together to share the importance of the civil rights movement and the need to take action to continue the values of courage, truth, compassion, dignity, humility, and service. And whereas the honoring event on January 19th will be an opportunity for us all to come together to learn about the legacy of Dr. King, to take part in a call to action, which will share how we engage in action to build a caring and inclusive community. The students at the Silver Creek Leadership Academy, Dr. King Committee, and Multicultural Action Committee take action by partnering to support this event and ensure that the legacy and history of the civil rights movement and Dr. King remain alive for us all. Now, therefore, I, Dennis L. Coombs, Mayor, by the virtue of authority invested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim the week of January 19th to the 23rd, 2015 as All Cultures, One Voice, honoring Dr. Martin L. King Jr. through Action Week in Longmont, and invite all to attend the events honoring Dr. King. So would you like to come forward, Stella? Yeah. First off, feel free, would you like to make some statements too first? Yeah, step up.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs and council members. I do humbly and gratefully accept the proclamation issued this year that marks the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Action Week. We are honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. next week, beginning on Monday at Silver Creek High School. It starts from 2 to 4 p.m. We do wish all you guys could come out and support. We have film, speakers. It usually doesn't last until 4, but sometimes it might because it just gets that good. Please just come out and support us. As a coach, I have a very strong voice. So tonight, I would like for everybody to yell and make this building stand up when I say all cultures. Y'all say one voice. All cultures.
One voice.
All cultures.
One voice.
All cultures.
One voice.
Thank ya.
Stella. Here we go. Thank you.
And Mayor Coombs, while you're taking your seat, I'll read the resolution for the next item. It is Resolution 2015-02, resolution of the Longmont City Council supporting law enforcement associations across America as part of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Sandy, is there someone here to make this? Say something?
Mayor Coombs, members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. You may remember at the last meeting, we talked about this at the very end of the meeting, and Gabe brought up and made a motion to bring back a resolution essentially celebrating Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. And as such, you saw the agenda revision that came up this week. And so that's what this resolution is for. And my guess is that there are some other folks that are interested in watching this pass as well. So maybe if you decide to pass it, we could take a photo afterwards.
Okay.
Councilmember Santos. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I see Chief Butler. Mike, do you want to come down and say anything before I do? It's a resolution.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I'm Mike Butler, the Public Safety Chief, and on behalf of all of our police officers, we want to express our gratitude for making this a very special day for people, not only in our police department, but for police officers across America and perhaps across the world. It's been an interesting time for police officers in terms of the difficulties that we have encountered over the last couple of months as a profession. But for those of you who have taken the time to ride along with our police officers here in the city, you have, I think, seen and experienced their skill, their compassion, their sense of service, their willingness to go into just about any kind of circumstance, their courage, and they come back day after day and continue to do it. And so on behalf of all these brave, incredible men and women, I just want to say thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Councilmember Santos. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, as members of council know that I asked for this to be put on the agenda. The National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day was on January 9th. We had a study session, so I asked it for it to be on the next regular session, so at least the city is, when we did recognize that on the last council meeting. This just shows that the city of Longmont just is an appreciation of the career that you've chosen. To me, this is a little bit more personal. With that, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind just reading the resolution.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read it down. A resolution of the Longmont City Council supporting law enforcement associations across America as part of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Whereas our law enforcement employees provide an essential function for our community, serving to protect life and property, whereas our law enforcement employees are caring, courteous, and professional, and they protect our community, and whereas in light of recent negativity directed toward law enforcement nationally, there is a need to show law enforcement officers that our citizens recognize the difficult and sometimes impossible job they do in public service to us all. And whereas the National Foundation Order of Police has partners with COPS and law enforcement associations across America to celebrate National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day on January 9th, 2015, the City Council of the City of Longmont resolves that the Longmont City Council supports law enforcement associations across America as part of National Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. The City Council repeals all resolutions or part of resolutions in conflict with this resolution, but only to the extent of such inconsistency. So that's basically it. So we've got them up. Do you want to?
I would move that we pass the resolution.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just very briefly, I own a small business, and I found that it's just as important to tell your employees that you're appreciated. And over the last couple of months, and now you're not my employee, but nevertheless, I am a representative of the city, at least Ward 1, and I know that based on the national and world news, your profession and the service you women and gentlemen perform has been under attack lately, and I think it's unfortunate. And just want to say thank you on behalf of the Bagley family, because we really do appreciate the work you do here in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
And I'd also like to personally thank you and Dan Benavides for going around to the neighborhoods and reaching out to the community and, trying to be ahead of the curve. And, that's very well received by this community. So it's, I just can't see Longmont becoming a Ferguson with the type of leadership that's being shown by our community. Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs, and I definitely echo that sentiment. Chief Butler, what you're doing and what other police officers are doing in Longmont by going into the neighborhoods and talking to residents is sometimes unheard of in some cities. So thank you. You all got a personal note from me. Thank you, and be safe.
Thanks again, City Council. We really very much appreciate it.
Councilmember Robinson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the extraordinary things we always hear from people that come to Longmont, and people especially looking to settle down here, whether or not they have children or family to join here in Longmont, or they're planning to make this their forever community, is how the sense of personal safety and how safe they feel the community is. And I think, of course, it's all due to not just citizens feeling that way, but a sense of order and safety and quick police response. People do rely on you folks to go in the direction that most of us will flee from. And I'm glad every day that you're willing to do that. And I know that over and over again I hear that other people really appreciate the services, even the small stuff. There's always that joke about getting cats out of trees, but you help do. I haven't heard of you getting fire department helping get cats out of trees, but And a lot of the big and the small stuff that you do is very much appreciated. If you don't hear all the small stuff, people do give you guys a nod. And I still look the other way if I'm next to a PD car because I'm thinking, well, what's my speed? But you guys have always been great.
Councilmember Christensen?
I just want to thank you too personally because I've lived in Oakland and San Francisco and Denver, and you guys are just the best. You are really gracious, courteous, and professional, and incredibly helpful beyond anything expected of you. That's been my experience. And I would like to point out that safety is the essential element of protecting democracy, as we've seen abroad. In 3 of the people killed in France were police officers, one of them a Muslim police officer. Without the police, we can't have democracy at all. We can't have a country. So I thank you again. Bye.
And Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Well, I can just continue to pile on. But I think what I'm going to say is that my experience, personal experience with enforcement of Longmont and the state of Colorado and the federal government's laws, I feel like the police department is almost invisible, but not quite. It's got the right amount of enforcement. The brake lights come on when you're doing a radar setup. So, I mean, you have to do some, but you don't have to overdo it. And I do believe you have the right mix, you have the right people, you have the right leader, and support of City Council. So I do appreciate it, and I thank you very much for your service.
And last but not least, Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I have to be heard as well because I also really appreciate what you guys do. I was in Washington, D.C. over the weekend, and my son was teaching a Sunday school class. And the kids had to fill out, I think they were 7 years old, what they were thankful for and what they were afraid of and what they were praying for. And one of the children said that they were frightened of the police. And I thought to myself, you know, that would never happen here in Longmont. And I'm so thankful, and we have you to thank for that. So thank you very much.
Okay, I guess we have a motion. It's been seconded. It's time to vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Sure.
It's 6:30.
It's all right. You're tall, you get back here. What is it?
Why do you like each other?
Yeah. Smile like you are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I gotta get to public invited to be heard. Okay, so it's time for public invited to be heard. So first, Elena Carlson. Just come down and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Alana Carlson. I live at 3427 Red Hawk Lane. Longmont, Colorado.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, 80504.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, good evening. I'm a junior at Niwot High School and a member of the Sexual Health AIDS Peer Education Group, also known as SHAPE. An important goal of SHAPE is to provide reliable information regarding sexual health to our fellow high schoolers. For this reason, we'd like to thank the City Council for the support of the Women's Health and Teen Clinic. As teens are in a unique position of facing adult situations while oftentimes still being treated like children, these resources are extremely important to the youth. Comprehensive sexual education can be difficult to obtain, and these clinics ensure that it does exist. Information may be difficult to obtain for a variety of reasons. Oftentimes, morals can be seen as a hindrance in talking about STI and pregnancy prevention beyond the use of abstinence, as some feel to do so would be the promotion of sex amongst youth. Other times, teen may feel shame regarding sex, as we live in a very sex-negative environment which promotes only one correct way of having sex and the expected attachments with it. Teen Clinic provides an unbiased, sex-positive environment which seeks to explore this topic in a manner that facilitates open discussion. And at times, it's just easier to speak to a stranger who will keep you an enemy than it is to discuss these topics with peers and family. In addition, by providing these clinics, free and reduced cost methods of birth control are made available through the Women's Health and Teen Clinic to further guarantee that people are able to make safe choices they are comfortable with in their sex lives. This especially speaks to reaffirming a woman's autonomy, regardless of their socioeconomic background. In this respect, it empowers a woman as she knows she doesn't have to depend on her partner, as oftentimes the burden is placed on a man. She can keep herself safe. Not only does Women's Health and Teen Clinic work with the prevention of spread of STIs and unwanted pregnancies, but offers services as well that can assist in the addressment of any perceived problems such as a suspected STI. These are valuable resources for both the men and women of our community. So tonight, I would like to thank the City Council for its continued support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alana. Matt, Workhoffen?
Yes, sir.
Hello, Matt Kuntz and all the City Council. I haven't been here in a very long time because I've been taking care of my sister's amazing 3 kids in California for 2 months. And I just wanted to let you know it's good to be an uncle because without Michelle, my sister, being the best mom in the world as she is, I wouldn't be there if it weren't for her kids. And I just wanted to let you guys know the BNSF Railway is doing really good. The coal trains are coming through town each and every day, one by one. And definitely, I just want to let people know of the city of Longmont and the Boulder County to stay off the tracks because these trains are very massive and very, very, very strong. And so I'm asking everybody, please stay off the tracks when the train's coming through because I surely don't want anybody out here being killed by a train. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Strider Benston?
And a couple of months ago, I rode with Matt on the bus on his way down to work. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. And remember Martin Luther King Day. I'm going to get to speak this year, briefly, of course. Gee, I forgot things. The Police Appreciation Day, as you may know, I have experienced both sides of that equation numerous times. And real history and real life is in stories. So I want to give you one little story about how significant it can be. February the 18th, 1965, we were in a little church in Marion, Alabama, and we got attacked by the Alabama State Troopers, and they shot out the street lights and bashed people severely, hundreds of people. and the tear gas and such. And that night, Jimmy Lee Jackson was killed. There was a prosecution 47 years later. But I want to tell you about the night after that. We had met all day in Brown's Chapel Church, and we voted with our feet. About 60 or 70 of us decided we were going to come out and do a march that night just for the right to march. That was the only issue. And we come down the steps of the church. Hosea Williams was in charge, and it was raining, and it was dark, and it was Friday night, football night, you know, high school boys, all of that. And Wilson Baker, the city police chief of Selma, was standing there with his 14-man Selma police force. And they had their clubs, you know, at half-staff, whatever you call it. And Wilson Baker called out, "Hosea, take your people back into the church." I'm sorry that I didn't know it was so quick. It'll be. Please give me a few more seconds. And Hosea starts calling out, "But Mr. Baker, you know we got the right to march, this American stuff." And Wilson Baker said, "Hosea, look behind me." And behind him was about 20 men on horseback and about 5 or 6 pickup trucks full of men, all of them carrying rifles and shotguns. And he says, "Hosea, look behind me. I cannot control these men. Please take your people back into the church." And Hosea started arguing, and Wilson Baker put him in the police car briefly, and we filtered back into the church, and then he let Hosea go. That one statement by the police chief maybe stopped a race war in this country. That's how tense it was that night. And down at the courthouse, Al Lingo and the state troopers were down there a mile away waiting for a massacre to take place so they could come mop up. It was that serious. And it was the Selma police and Chief Wilson Baker who stopped the massacre. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Well, that ends public invited to be heard. So now we move on to ordinances on the second reading.
Mayor Coombs, your first item tonight is ordinance 2015-01, a bill for an ordinance amending section 3.04.885 of the Longmont Municipal Code, adopting amended and restated pension plans. There is no formal staff presentation. Jim Golden is here to address questions if you have any.
Does anyone from council have any questions? Okay, can I have a motion? Oh, excuse me. Getting ahead of myself. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on ordinance 2015-01? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilman Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would move passage of ordinance 1501.
Okay, let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your second item is ordinance 2015-02, a bill for an ordinance designating 1241 3rd Avenue, the G.W. Butler House, as a local historical landmark. And again, we do not have a formal staff presentation. Brian Schumacher is here to address questions if you have them.
Okay. Any questions from council before we open up the public hearing? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing on ordinance 2015-02. Anyone from the public like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I move ordinance 2015-02.
Second.
Okay, let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2015-03, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 1503 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding the mixed-use zoning. Brian Schumacher, our senior planner, is here to provide this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Brian Schumacher with Planning Development Services. So you have before you some amendments to the mixed-use district. As noted in the communication, the ordinance was originally adopted in 2009. Since that time, we've had the Roosevelt Park Apartments go through the rezoning to mixed use and utilize that ordinance. We've also been working with the developer of the prior Butterball site, and obviously we had the First and Main rezoning, which is about 100 acres. That was rezoned to mixed use as well. We've been working with the owner and developer of the Butterball site on plans for phased redevelopment of that site. And obviously, they'd like to utilize the mixed-use zoning ordinance, district ordinance as well. We received input not only from staff, but also from the developer as well as consultants from the Roosevelt Park Apartments and the Butterball site in terms of amendments that would make the mixed-use district a little bit more flexible and allow for more creative and flexible design and mix of uses. And we've gotten some valuable input from Mr. Brian Bear as we've gone through this process, and recommendations for some potential changes that were incorporated by the Planning and Zoning Commission when they reviewed this item this past summer. Council will note that you reviewed a draft of this item in August, and then we took the item to the to the Historic Preservation Commission in September and got some input from them regarding proposed changes. And at the time, the Historic Preservation Commission recommended retaining some language that would allow them to get referrals for developments that are nearby, either existing landmarks or potential landmarks, and so retain that language in the ordinance. Some of the more substantive changes are noted in your communication. I'll just hit upon a couple of them real briefly. In the previous ordinance with the amendments, the Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission, recommended not having prescribed ground floor non-residential minimum standards, and the intent there in their thought process by the Commission was to allow as much flexibility as possible for redevelopment of these areas and to allow the mixed-use development to occur more organically as opposed to prescribing a certain amount of non-residential ground floor development with a project. And we did receive some input not only from consultants as well as the developer in terms of allowing as much flexibility as possible so that you don't end up with potentially currently too much ground floor non-residential space and have vacant storefronts. The second item that's more substantive issues was encouraging residential density in the mixed-use district, and so we've incorporated some minimum density requirements. So we've got 25 units per acre in the core areas. That's for the areas that are more intensive type of development, and then we've got a 10 unit per acre minimum in the transition areas. And obviously that could be modified through the review process by the decision-making body if it feels is appropriate to lessen those density requirements. We also have an allowance for small lot, single-family detached in the transition areas where it's deemed to be appropriate. And we feel that that could be potentially incorporated on a case-by-case basis. And then also the Commission thought that it was appropriate to increase the maximum allowed height in the core areas up to 5 stories, and that they also felt that it was appropriate to allow 5 stories in the transition areas as well, except for developments that were nearby residential areas where you'd have a step down in terms of building height, whether that be 3 stories or 2 stories, depending on how close a development was to the surrounding residential areas. You'll note in the communication there were some modifications that were made since the last time the council reviewed this item in August. I tried to highlight those items. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have regarding that. And then finally, I just wanted to mention, you're probably familiar, staff is working on a document that's referred to the St. Vrain Blueprint. And so as part of that, one of the components of that is looking at redevelopment opportunities along the St. Vrain Creek corridor. And we anticipate coming back to Plan and Zoning Commission and City Council with some amendments regarding those recommendations. But obviously, we wanted City Council to have a chance to review the St. Vrain Blueprint document before we bring back code amendments. So with that, I'll turn it over to City Council for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and open this up for, Councilmember Christensen.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mayor. I have a question about the requirement to make the main entrance on the St. Vrain corridor. Usually, you want that main entrance to be on the road, which would be on the other side of the building. I mean, it seems to me that for a business, it would be best to have have two entrances, and in fact, you have to have two entrances anyway, but doesn't having it be on the corridor, which doesn't have a street to it, make it more difficult for people to actually get into the business, if that's considered the main entrance?
Mayor, Councilmember Christensen, I think the intent is to, if they have a development that's adjacent to the St. Vrain Creek corridor, is to at least have a primary entrance facing the river, but you could also have a primary entrance that faces an adjacent street, if there is such an adjacent street, or an access off to the back.
Well, I'm thinking of things like Left Hand Brewery, for instance, that's already down on the corridor and doesn't have an entrance there, but it has a presence because that's where the garden is, and I just don't want to make it more difficult for businesses to have,
And as part of the amendments as well, we've had this in the original ordinance, is that, we're trying to allow as much flexibility as possible to allow modifications to those standards. And if it's an administrative process, then potentially even staff could approve some of those modifications so they don't have to go through a full-blown, drawn-out variance process. So we acknowledge that we're trying to encourage buildings that front along the river corridor. We want to have an active presence there along the river corridor.
You don't want to have just a blank
yes.
wall.
And so we want to encourage that as much as possible, and that's why the standard is in there. But we're certainly willing to work with a development if they can't make that fit. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Councilmember Levinson.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also believe that in response to development that had happened a little further east of Main Street, the Harvest Junction, not only residents walking on the Greenway, but other professionals who have come through the city and presented to planning staff had scratched their head and said, well, what were you thinking? Where you have this beautiful pedestrian corridor and your view as a pedestrian where you notice more things because your walking speed is the garbage pails at the back and the loading docks. And so the idea that we approve development where they turn their back to the biggest asset that we have, one of the biggest assets we have in the community that's very pleasant and that we're seeing as a primary transportation mode, I think in this view to have some pedestrian connection and a door on the river corridor absolutely is a response to that and what people thought was kind of a silly way not to be able to have a face on the river with Harvest Junction. So I think it'll improve what we see from the corridor.
Well, Brian, the way I look at it, when you go up to Estes Park and you're along that river corridor, you see those businesses like McDonald's bookstore and a few of the restaurants where off that river corridor, they've got entrances that are just beautiful on the backside. They're just as beautiful as the front side. And I think that's what we're trying to develop, that type of flexibility where we want, that to be, a real pedestrian, business-friendly, with beer gardens and coffee shops along the corridor someday. But I think that was kind of the intent of how you drafted this.
Exactly, Mayor. I'm all for beer gardens. So, yeah, that's exactly the intent. I mean, if you have restaurants that are along the river corridor, you want to have seating out to take advantage of that great amenity that we have.
All right. I don't see any further questions, so I'll now open this up for public hearing. It looked like we had Dwayne Lease you signed up to speak on this item.
My name's Dwayne Lease. I live at 2686 Pearl Howlett, Longmont, Colorado. Actually, what I'm going to be talking about is not exactly this. It has to do with some changes that I've been hearing about changing the way that public input to developments is going to be made available. Potentially 750 yards. You have to be that close to a development to be able to be notified and know about it. Just like this river corridor kind of thing, this is something that essentially impacts the entire community. The other thing is I certainly wouldn't want to see planning and zoning being honed down as far as public input. The most important aspect of a community and the reason that government exists is the people. The most important aspect is the intellectual property that's generated by these citizens. That intellectual property are ideas and thoughts, objections, accolades as to what's going to be happening as far as development. Development actually creates the environment in which we take activity as human beings. We take it for granted once it's in place, but we need to be very thoughtful, very, very thoughtful when we put developments into place. And it has to, and I think it believes and it should be, more than just the financial aspects of it. Government is put in place not just to take care of the financial aspects of stuff, but other considerations. Businesses do most of their decision making on what makes me money, what's going to make money. But government is the one area where people can come and offer other avenues, other aspects of thought about what's going on. This is not the culture that we want to generate. This is not this, or it is, we want to do this to generate culture. At any rate, thank you very much for your time in doing all of this stuff that has to be done in the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this ordinance 2015-03?
Brian Brown, 1241 3rd Avenue.
Okay.
Longmont. Mr. Shoemaker was just a huge help in helping us get our house on the net, as a historic landmark. We recently moved back to Longmont. I grew up here, moved back from Florida. When it comes to development, one of the things that I was appalled by when I moved to Florida was they talked to somebody on the zoning commission about something, and they said, it's not really up to us, that's up to the developers. And that's the philosophy there. I don't want it to be the philosophy here. Again, with all due respect, Mr. Shoemaker, and I hope I misheard this, but had I heard what I just heard before I bought my home, I probably wouldn't have bought my home. And I probably wouldn't have bought it there. Because I work in construction, I have an architectural engineering degree, I work in design, I work with developers, and when somebody says we're going to put a minimum density in, that means we're looking at high density. When they tell me that, when I hear the phrase that we're going to, we want the flexibility to increase residential units and we want the ability to raise height limitations, what I envision is 5-story apartment buildings with inadequate access, become a huge problem for traffic, and 20 years from now will be a slum. I bought my house because I grew up here, I love this town, I wanted to come back to this town, and I want to retire in this town. And I'd like for that home to be in my family for generations to come. I do not want it to be on the edges of a slum, and that sounds like where this might be headed if this goes on as currently discussed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at public invite on this ordinance 2015-03? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would have to, I wanted to make a comment to Dwayne. Dwayne, I know what you're talking about. It's not this particular ordinance, but when we bring that back, you should come back and talk to us again. Also, Brian, not you, the Brian who just spoke on 3rd Avenue, I don't think you're around any mixed-use land, are you, on 3rd Avenue? I don't think you are. I see. I happen to be the liaison for planning and zoning. They went through this with a fine-tooth comb. So did our staff. I think they did a great job on it, and so I would like to move ordinance 1503.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Your next item is ordinance 2015-04, a bill for an ordinance approving a concept plan amendment for the Kubat Archdiocese property. There is not a formal staff presentation plan, but Ben Ortiz is here to address questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Ben before I open up the public hearing? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on 2015-04. Does anybody from the public like to speak on this ordinance? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I'd move ordinance 2015-04.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded by Councilmember Moore. Let's vote. It passes 7-0.
Item 8E is ordinance 2015-05, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 11, Chapter 11.04, Section 064 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding child restraint systems required. And we do not have a planned staff presentation on this item.
Okay, any questions from council before I open up the public hearing on this ordinance? Okay, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing on ordinance 2015-05. Anybody from the public like to speak on this? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would move ordinance 2015-05.
Okay, let's vote.
Just a second, up on my cursor.
That passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, we now move on to the consent agenda. Item 9A is ordinance 2015-06, an ordinance making additional appropriations for the expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2015. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for January 27th. Item 9B is ordinance 2015-07, a bill for an ordinance amending chapters 1503 and 1504 of the Longmont Municipal Code regarding affordable housing in the mixed industrial zoning district. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for January 27th. Item 9C is ordinance 2015-08, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the Park Meadows rezoning from residential low-density R1 to residential planned unit development PUDR, generally located on the south side of Nelson Road, east of Airport Road. Public hearing and second reading is scheduled for January 27th. Item 9D is two ordinances. Ordinance 2015-09, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 14, Chapter 14.04 of the Longmont Municipal Code on the water utility and wells, and Ordinance 2015-10, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 14, Chapter 14.08 of the Longmont Municipal Code on sewers. Both of these ordinances have public hearings scheduled for January 27th. Item 9E is Resolution 2015-01, approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the City of Boulder for a cost-share agreement for the use of downloadable digital media. Item 9F is approve and authorize the mayor to sign a special council contract with Lyons, Gaddis, Kahn, Hall, Jeffers, Dwork, and Grant PC for alcohol and fermented malt beverage matters. Item 9G is accept a grant in the amount of $6,000 from the Temple Howell Buell Foundation for Mayor's Book Club. And staff does not have a need to pull any of these items.
Councilmember Rosen.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull item 9B.
Okay. Councilmember Bagley.
I'd actually like to pull C and D.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Finley.
Mayor, I would like to move the consent agenda minus 9B, C, and D.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0. Councilmember Levison.
So this item is ordinance 2015-07, which is about the mixed affordable housing and mixed-use zoning district.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I thought we were supposed to have a map at our desk tonight.
Sorry, I was at a basketball game. I should have gotten there earlier.
Did you win?
What's that?
Did you win?
Yes.
Whoever you were rooting for, if you weren't the one playing. Good. I know that this is coming before us due to a particular need in the community, and I just want to say that I'm not opposed to the housing authority having long-term development of an adjacent parcel that they purchased along with the former suites, which was a long stay residence that was owned by the folks that own the Best Western Plus. What I took a look at in this situation with the changing everything in mixed industrial zoning district to have affordable housing, and then at the end of our council communication there was a notation by staff that they may actually also look at opening it up not just for affordable housing, but they could look at it for additional changes that could be made to allow market rate multifamily districts, multifamily dwellings, both in MI and other commercial and industrial zoning districts. I really think that there's a number of issues here that, one in particular that I think that planning and zoning did not take a look at, which I was considering this afternoon, and that is when you're looking at these mixed industrial zoning districts, there are these very small, in some cases, parcels that are really great advantages for primary employers to purchase and then develop to expand a specific business, or if it's a new business, to have a custom-built site that they own and control. And one of the concerns I have is that we have only 16% of this zoning category left as vacant. And, the 5 acres we're talking about with the Longmont Housing Authority project is, 5 acres of 83. However, we could continue to creep down the number of acres available for primary employers to purchase a site and have it developed to meet their needs. And I think part of what's sticking with me right now is that there is a financial sustainability question that certainly planning and zoning had not discussed. And I took the initiative and spoke with the Boulder County Assessor's Office today and took a look at what the difference in valuation would be on, especially if we're looking at residential ownership of, folks that would be at that 80% AMI to own their homes. So I took a valuation of $200,000 of actual value. And if a property is residential, that would yield $1,481 in taxes using our current mill levy. And then if it's commercial, that would yield $5,400 on that same $200,000 valuation. So I really think we have to be cautious because every, if you could look at it this way, every $200,000 chunk of money that we remove out of that commercial category is a loss of property tax revenue, which we don't get 100% of the property tax, but is a significant differential. It's about $4,000 a year different. And that's, for the long term, that's a lot if you keep converting acres after acres into residential. The other point, when we're looking at maybe considering this change to allow the affordable housing to be built by and to be offered to homeowners, is that the biggest wealth and equity generator for a family is their residence, and having that equity grow over time. And in a mixed industrial use, you may have home ownership and it may be affordable, but long term, I don't think you're going to be able to build the equity and the growth in the value of that house when you have these other industrial uses that are indeterminate and can change so much over time. In fact, mixed industrial has quite a few uses that would absolutely kill the resale value of houses. If you have adult-oriented businesses that come in later, that's a use by right, and some other heavier industry that still fits into mixed income. I really think it's not going to make our goals or meet our goals of having people of modest income get into housing when we know that it's this kind of situation with the zoning district they're in. Mixed industrial would perhaps tamp down the equity growth of their investment. So I want council to consider doing something different with this. I know it's been through planning and zoning, and I've talked to our planning staff, and there is actually another method by which the applicant here, Longmont Housing Authority, could achieve the same goal, and that would be that the council not consider this evening, but instead instruct planning staff to look at bringing forth a comprehensive plan amendment to change this parcel where the suites is in to residential zoning, and then also ask them to fast track the change in zoning to residential. Because in this way, we're really meeting the goals and not just doing a systemic change in the mixed industrial to add uses where we haven't really considered what the long-term financial and dynamic in the community to insert residential. And speaking with Councilmember Christensen today, she reminded me of the conflict we encountered with the Grossenbart Manufacturing Brewery being adjacent to the charter school. You know, we're setting ourselves up to future conflicts of that same nature if we enact this today. So I'll wait for others' comments.
Councilmember Warren.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Yeah, I was aware of this need at the suites for Longmont Housing Authority to be able to put forth their agenda and make the housing more permanent and build another building there. And I'm fully supportive of that because it really kind of does actually fit into that limited use that's outlined in the ordinance. But that doesn't mean down the road that same thing will happen, where we may end up with an affordable housing unit, and we may end up with a 24/7 manufacturing or warehouse unit next to it with lights and noise and trucks and incompatible use that really will not make it a good place for residential housing. And on the other side of that coin is also the ability for manufacturers to come into Longmont or even warehousing operations, to be able to adequately find a good place to live in the right locations. We're closing off a lot of options potentially if we have a housing unit there. While I do support the housing authority for this particular instance, my belief is we should continue to go through this process for specific applications, but I'm having a tough time supporting this as a broad brush approach to changing an ordinance. There are reasons to make sure that we're not painting ourselves into a corner and creating a situation like that will not be tenable in the future for residential use as well as business use. So I struggle with this. I know that it was a total surprise when it came out as all mixed industrial would reach this level of zoning. So I was expecting for this one project. I was not expecting it to be a broad brush approach across the whole city. So I'd like to know more about what the other council members feel about this before we move on, but I'm not sure I can support it on second reading. I might support it to move to public comment, but it's just at this point, I'm not happy with what we have.
Councilmember Christensen.
I think this particular project of the suites and everything that's mentioned in here, that particular project is excellent. It's an excellent location. But I agree that doing it this way and making it part of an overall change to our development is not a very good idea. I would suggest that we move forward as suggested by Councilwoman Levison and direct staff to change this into something, fast track it with so that we could move it forward, but also do it in a more focused way. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos. Mayor Coombs, Brian, there's a reason why this was done for the entire mixed industrial zoning, correct? Because you can't spot zone one area. That's what we're trying to avoid here with the suites.
Well, we'd want to avoid spot zoning. But I think if we went through a process of the land use amendment, a comprehensive plan amendment, and if it were to meet that criteria for a comprehensive plan amendment, then I think we would have the ability to rezone the property if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan without running up against the issue of spot zoning. This was one of the tools that we presented as a possibility of looking at more of a broad brush approach with a text amendment to the mixed industrial zoning district. Obviously, we're focusing on this one property that the Longmont Housing Authority owns. Realistically, we wouldn't anticipate a big run or a lot of affordable housing projects in the mixed industrial zoning district, but when you do a text amendment, obviously it applies to the entire zoning district. You can't apply it to specifically just one or a few properties when you're doing a text amendment. Again, if this were to go forward, if the change were to be made, again, there's a limited number of vacant mixed industrial parcels. The biggest one is about 6 acres in size. I wouldn't anticipate, obviously, from an economic council standpoint, in terms of primary employment, primary employer looking at a 6 acre smaller parcel as their first choice, although I wouldn't say exclude that out as a possibility for a primary employer. But our experience in conversations with the Longmont Area Economic Council in the past is that second map is the BLI zoning, is they're primarily concerned about trying to preserve larger parcels of BLI zoning for primary employment areas, of which we have a fair amount of vacant ground in the BLI zoning area.
So
Again, the text amendment is one approach.
What surprises me that was been mentioned because members of council, several members of council had said they don't like comprehensive plan amendments. So now we're talking about a comprehensive plan amendment. But let's say that Joe Smith, developer, comes in and says, you know, I'd like to add affordable housing and MI zoning. That still goes through the process of planning and zoning?
Not necessarily. The way it's set up right now, it's a limited use. We could potentially send it up to Plan and Zoning Commission. It could be approved administratively. We've outlined or established some criteria. We prefer that these affordable housing projects be near services such as shopping, educational uses, transit uses, and they're not near incompatible uses. I mean, I think we'd also have a problem as staff approving an affordable housing project that's near a highly intensive industrial type of use or an adult use or some other type of uses that we feel is inappropriate to have an affordable housing or any type of residential for that matter.
So how does, I'm sorry.
Sorry, and one thing else I just wanted to mention, this amendment is limited at this time just to affordable housing projects. It doesn't allow for the market rate multifamily in the mixed industrial zoning district. So again, you know, we had on the books for quite a while, we had affordable housing as an allowed use, a limited use in the BLI zoning district, but that was a little bit different. That had to be part of a mixed-use development as opposed to, it couldn't be a standalone residential project. But since that has been on the books, we haven't had any affordable housing projects in the BLI zoning either. So our experience, based on past experience, we don't anticipate a large number of affordable housing projects in the MI zoning districts, but that's not to say that potentially couldn't happen.
So this wouldn't go to P&Z, but it would come to council? Or be approved administratively?
It could be potentially approved administratively as a limited use, but if you wanted to change that, council have the prerogative. You could change that to be a conditional use review in the MI district, which would require a neighborhood meeting. It would require a public hearing review by Plan and Zoning Commission. It could be appealed up to City Council as well, if you prefer to go that route.
That's probably the best route instead of doing a comprehensive plan amendment, because then you could, actually what you could do is, since we're going to be working on that in the next, where's Joni? Next year and a half, on the comprehensive plan, the revisions of the comprehensive plan, instead of trashing the work that's here, which is actually pretty good work, I don't see why we just don't include that it would go the route of planning and zoning with the hearing, kick to council if it needs to gets appealed, which we approved those rules that should be coming back to us here real soon. That's what I would consider instead of, you know, again, I've heard from time and time again, we don't like comprehensive plan amendments. We're about to go through an overhaul. I think that would probably be a fix to maybe accommodate some of the council members' concerns.
What are the risks if we did do a comprehensive plan amendment? Is it just too time lengthy? I mean, I don't want to do anything that's going to slow down affordable housing, because that's one of our biggest problems right now, and put more risk on a project not getting built. But I also don't want to do something insane and have people calling me up because they're upset because, you know, a welding company or car painting factories next door to them either, you know. So, yeah, I understand both sides of the argument. I just want to know what's the easiest solution from your point of view.
I mean, Mayor, in terms of risk, the comprehensive plan rezoning amendment, it's just a matter of additional time for the Longmont Housing Authority to go through that process. I don't know if certainly Mr. Reese can come down and speak to that if he would have any objection to going through that process for the Housing Authority. I think he's here anyway.
Yeah.
And again, changing the review process in the MI district for affordable housing to go through a conditional use process. That adds an additional step for anybody proposing that, but it also adds some assurity for the surrounding property owners as well as the interested public in a project.
Okay. Councilmember Levison.
I guess what's problematic for me, even with the new suggestion, is that when I'm looking at the business light industrial zoning map, I do see instances where the mixed industrial abuts BLI. There's one little segment down here between Nelson and Rogers Road, west of 95th, and it's all pretty much the whole area around it is BLI, and there's a little MI, and it actually shares a common border. I think that what's problematic with the other method with the conditional use is that, as the mayor pointed out, the people that are going to be the end users, either renting affordable housing or being an owner of an affordable unit, they are actually the end users. They're not users. They're not going to be the ones that will even have the wherewithal to know that could be where they could end up and then make some kind of comment. It would only be the property owners in the 750-foot zone around it. And, I could see many reasons why BLI property owners would want to quash housing abutting their uses. And there's more than one area that applies to. I would like to hear from Mr. Reese, but I also really can't send this on to second reading with the way it is. I really think that the financial long-term change in property tax revenue is something that we do need to consider, because the more parcels that are converted, the less opportunity we have to have that support in our community from property taxes from a financial sustainability point of view. And of course, if the folks building and holding the interest in the housing are nonprofits, obviously we wouldn't have any tax revenue at all. And while that may not be a big impact when you're looking at something that was already a residential use, it would be a big impact if it's we keep continuing to ever weigh that commercial property tax revenue. So it would be nice to hear from Mr. Reese if you wanted to invite him.
Yeah, let's, Councilmember Warren.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Having heard the conditional use option, I think I could support that. I think rather than start this all over again and sending it back to comp plan amendment and rezoning and keeping this project, for this particular project, was kind of precipitated this need to change this zoning. I mean, this financing is dependent on getting this zoning change fixed so that they can actually operate in that area and start their planning process for a new building. So, as well as renovations to the existing building. So, I guess that's why we talk about this stuff at council, so we can figure out different solutions. So, I would like to move this on to second reading. So I would move 2015-07 on to second reading with the conditional use. Yes.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Begley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I guess my thought on this is I'm going to support the motion, but even without the motion, we have a problem with affordable housing, and you can't have it. I was in court today, and there was a pro se party on the other side said, "Objection! You can't have your cake and eat it too." That's not illegal. There's no legal foundation for that. And I got a chuckle, and just like, that's an awesome objection. Go ahead, let it in. but the you can't have your cake and eat it too. And so, on one hand, you can't encourage that affordable housing occur in particular areas, but at the same time expect it to remain affordable. I think that I don't know what you would say or what your opinion is, and like Councilmember Levison, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this matter before we vote, Mr. Reese. But I also think that in reading through it, I think that the staff has done a good job of finding a balance, of saying, look, we welcome people like Mr. Reese and his organization to come in and look for areas in the city to provide affordable housing. And yeah, I'm all for not losing tax revenues, but at the same time, you got to increase the supply of housing, especially affordable housing, if you want prices to go down for people to afford them. And by saying that we're welcoming people to build these types of, residences is a good thing. And I think that, and if you look specifically on page 2, it does talk about, heaven forbid, a sexually oriented business moving next to my home. But then staff included, for example, it says uses that require and can provide separation or isolation from other types of land uses. And residential uses are also allowed in appropriate locations to facilitate mixed-use developments. You look at places in town like Prospect. That's a mixed-use development. Now, I don't think, Mr. Hanson and Mr. Pickett, their neighborhood, I think, is probably an exception to the rule when it comes to the neighborly cooperation, welding, apartments, all that stuff. But I think that's an exception, and they seem to somehow work it out without killing each other. And on page 3, paragraph 3, line 5, it says limits on residential uses in the MI district, except for affordable housing, independent living facilities, and multifamily dwellings. And then it goes on to line 9, affordable housing and independent living facilities and multifamily dwellings is allowed in standalone residential buildings in the MI district with no limit to the percent of residential use, etc. There's other areas in here that it says you can have residences inside the warehouse, and they really do a good job, just like Prospect, saying you're allowed to combine industrial, along with the residential. They're just saying that, hey, if you want to build, we'll give you an exception. If you're willing to build affordable housing, we'll actually cut you some slack and make it easier for you to build affordable housing. I think that as it's written is a really easy, it's not the solution, but anytime we can free up the possibility of having somebody like Mr. Reese and his organization come in and build cheaper housing, which is affordable, I think that that's going to the solution of trying to figure out a way to provide affordable housing, which we have to start doing. And I think that if we wait to find the perfect solution, which I don't think we'll ever be able to find, I think that the more you force affordable housing into residential areas, it's not going to be affordable. And so I welcome Mr. Reese and his ingenuity to start developing in these areas and figure out a way to provide some housing that's affordable.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I would agree with Councilmember Bagley. This particular parcel is well suited for this use. And I think particularly if we add it as a conditional use into this ordinance where there is some method where planning and zoning and council gets to weigh in on the next one that happens, that's a good thing. And I don't see any reason not to do it. $4,000 a year difference on assessed valuation. I just don't see that. We need affordable housing more than we need the $4,000 a year. It's an immediate use, and we need to do it with alacrity, and so I am supporting it.
Yeah, but that difference between what commercial real estate pays for property tax and what a resident pays, it's the 4 to 1 factor. Well, that only counts as if a business is actually there in business and built something, and as long as this area stays unoccupied, I think right now we do need housing more than we need businesses, because we have workers that are now employed in Longmont that are living outside of Longmont. And so our biggest concern right now is to solve that problem. So to me, let's solve that problem, and then we can worry about other problems. So I tend to agree with what Councilmember Bagley had to say. Councilmember Santos.
Here comes where you took what I was going to say regarding the businesses that would maybe or potentially be there. Plus, those residences are, as we always try to encourage residents, shop Longmont.
Live in Longmont.
Yeah, live Longmont, shop Longmont. You belong in Longmont. Michael, everyone's asking to hear from you, so why don't you come on down? You're the next contestant. Hope you have. You didn't know you were going to speak tonight, did you?
Just sounds smart. That's all I
Thank you, Mike Larice. I'm the director of Longmont Housing Authority. Thank you. We started this process with the text amendment really because we perceived it to be the faster of all the processes and tools that we could use to achieve the kind of zoning we do need under the suites, building the 6-acre parcel, to refinance it in the marketplace. This year is the goal to refinance it, and we do, in order to build any additional housing on that site, we have to get the zoning corrected. So the text amendment, while it sort of expands the request to allow for this type of housing in the rest of the zone, generally we're supportive as a housing authority, because part of our role is to also make recommendations to the community about what we can do as a community to improve the delivery of affordable housing. And this is one of those we perceive easy tools to take advantage of, and you can do it now. And I think the idea of putting a little teeth in future approval processes is a fine compromise.
That was my next question.
As opposed to a comp plan text amendment when we know we're going through a whole comp plan project next year, which will also slow this pace. And again, I think I want to reiterate what Brian spoke to, is we're not expecting a rush of private sector, nonprofit, or public sector agencies to begin delivering affordable housing in this zone. Yeah, we can wish. We'll be busy enough on our 6-acre parcel that the rest of it will probably have to wait. And you'll have a comp plan change in that process in the next year or so, which you can take the time to look at this particular zone as part of your comp plan and how you do that. We're probably talking about a year before some other adjustments come to this particular zone. I mean, having everybody have to come through with their projects anyway is sort of price of what we do.
Okay.
I don't know if that was brilliant conversation or not, but I certainly heard all of you wanted to hear from me tonight.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lawson.
Actually, I want to have a point of disagreement with my fellow council member Bagley. I kind of got a little disturbed when you made a statement that, the more we put housing in residential zones, the more expensive it gets. Sometimes housing belongs in residentially zoned neighborhoods. And one of the other points I had not brought up previously is, while the code does say that that housing is going to be encouraged, where there is areas that are accessible to all those amenities that we expect as a standard for residential properties in our community, I would really like to see an analysis of where there is access to a neighborhood park, where those children in those mixed in the mixed industrial area would play when they might be just in an area that's bordered by, very large, 4 or 5 lane streets with long stretches between lights. How are they going to get to a park? How is the school district going to deliver services to get those children, extra trips in to get children to get to schools? Is there going to be a safe way for children to get to schools and for people to get to other amenities? And I guess I'm not as comfortable about, adding that additional level, just because I really think that spreading this over the entire mixed industrial area, and opening the door that we're going to look at not just affordable housing, but market rate housing is something that I think we need to be very cautious about. And as one point on the financials were based on, for every $200,000 in actual value, there is a $4,000 per year differential. So if the commercial property that is developed is $1 million building, I seriously doubt there would be 5 affordable units that would exceed that. And then and mostly my perception is that commercial properties actually have a higher valuation than residential property. So again, I'm looking at a difference of $4,000 per year forever of each $200,000 in actual value, and losing that potential in the community to have those employers and commercial services there, I think is something that I want to be more cautious than this proposal addresses.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I just want to clarify one thing. I'm in agreement that in residential areas, they always should allow residential dwelling units, just to be clear. And I just want to point out that, this is an interesting theoretical, philosophical discussion we're having, but right now, mixed industrial use already allows residential units to be produced. This is only allowing Longmont Housing Authority and other folks like that nonprofit to come in and build affordable housing. It basically says, you know what, if you want to have a residential place here, under 2 on page 2, line 9, limits on residential uses in the BLI district. Residential uses are allowed only in the same building as commercial industrial uses, provided the residential component comprises 50% or less of the total development floor area. It's already in there. We're not voting on this whole thing. We're just voting on those things that are italicized. That's it. And so, we're debating, something that is already law in the city. And so, and then going to your comment, Councilmember Levison, I understand where your heart is, but it says specifically, where's this at? Where'd it go? There was one of the changes that we're doing specifically states, here it is. And it was back to the section that I was referring to before on page 195, line 9 of paragraph 3, affordable housing and independent living facility. First of all, it makes the exception. You can build it there 100%, one unit or one building, which is good. It says affordable housing and independent living facilities and multifamily dwellings is allowed in standalone residential buildings in the MI district with no limit to the percent of residential use, provided the use is near shopping, schools, parks, and recreation facilities and transit service and will be compatible with surrounding uses. I don't think we need a study. It's already in here. It says, hey, future councils, planning and zoning, let's go ahead and allow them to build standalone units, but it's got to be near shopping, schools, parks, and recreation facilities and transit service. So, I think the staff has done, I agree with all your concerns that I'm hearing tonight. I just think that as it's written, actually addresses them all and will allow LHA to actually come in and build affordable housing, as Mr. Reese said, in an easy way, but they still are going to have to, they're not building slums. They're not, I'm just saying that we can't just designate residential uses. This is an easy way to carve up a tool we already have and say, hey, come on in, just make sure it's near a park, school, transit, make sure it's not a slum area, and let's allow them to build some affordable housing.
All right, can we, Councilmember Levison?
And I just want to reiterate that, we've seen some really big stretches when, housing is going in where you have to cross a 5-lane or 6-lane road out at Mill Village, and that's not really that close to the services and other things. So we've made some stretches in the past. I just want to make sure that, you know, we're not creating subclass neighborhoods, residential neighbors within industrial areas. And I do know that we're allowed some, okay? Allowing some housing anyway.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, that passes 5-2 with Councilmember Levison, Councilmember Christensen dissenting.
Mayor Coombs, your next item is C, which is ordinance 2015-08, and that is the Park Meadows rezoning from low density to planned unit development. And Ava is here to make this presentation or address questions.
Councilmember Bagley.
You're right, I take it back. That took too long. I'm tired. No, just kidding. So my question is, I mean, as we're preparing to build there, I'm going to vote for this, but I just want to point out that we have a problem on the horizon that I see and that I do not want to have happen. And that is, we continue to have building around the airport. We continue to have complaints about the noise. And I do not want to reach a point. I am pro-airport, and we need to support the airport. And I do not want to be in a position, and this has not necessarily anything to do with, I mean, like I said, I'm voting for it. But we need to make sure that as we move forward, that with this and other, developments down there, that we're not fostering an environment where folks are going to become fed up with the airport, the noise, the nuisance, and they decide that, you know what, I don't care about the grants. I don't care what it'll cost the city. We saw the fracking. I just don't want to lose the airport. And so, as we move forward with development down there, we gotta figure something out. So I just wanted to point that out because it makes my stomach twist. Apparently I wasn't on council, but the first time they built down their residential units, our airport advisory board quit in protest because they saw that there was going to be problems. And so problems keep compounding. So I'm going to vote for this, but it's good for the developer and they have the right to build and the people who are going to buy know what they're getting into. But I see a storm on the horizon regarding our airport, and I think it should be avoided somehow. So, yeah, I was going to move it, but you want to move it?
What? Oh, I had a question. Well, not a question. I agree with you. I think that's the problem we all have with this is we keep building stuff down there. We just eliminated a school down there, and now we're adding in more density. And we have residents complaining about their water table dropping, and we still haven't solved the problem with the airport. So it's something we've got to address somehow sooner or later. And I'll be supporting this, but I also have the same reservations as Councilman Bagley. Thank you.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Yeah, well, we all have concerns about what's being built around the airport. Hopefully we'll get some resolution regarding airport uses with the new attorney we hired, looking over all the leases and things. And just a point of clarification, we did not eliminate a school. The school district said they weren't going to build. So let's be very clear that we did not eliminate a school. So that's not what was said. You said we eliminated a school. We did not. So let's be clear because the press is here and sometimes they take things. Oh, I understand, Councilmember Christensen. But the school board decided they didn't need the school that was there. So let's be very clear.
Councilmember Bagley.
That said, I move ordinance 2015-08.
I'll second it. Let's vote.
Oh.
That passes 7-0. And now, Councilmember Bagley.
Next item is item D, and that's the water and sewer fees, and Barb is here to address questions.
Okay. Councilmember Bagley.
I do have a question. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. My questions, I had mentioned before that I'd gotten some phone calls from a couple of angry citizens, and maybe ornery is more the appropriate word. They yelled at me for 20 minutes and then went on to talk about, pleasant things and the YMCA. And however, I thought my understanding was that we had asked for staff to look into some type of assistant for seniors or low-income residents. I saw it in the packet, but I didn't see it in the ordinance. Did we have a chance to do that?
Mayor Coombs and Councilmember Bagley, we currently have a senior rebate program, and we've had it for many, many, many years.
For the record, could you educate me, please?
Sure. That's actually, there's a time frame between January 1st and April 15th of every year that you can go in and apply, and it's income qualifying, and it's administered by our senior services folks, and they get a certain percentage off of their bill. And we also did mention when we were down here in December that we would be looking at affordability overall for the whole bill, and that we would bring that later on in 2015.
Is there a way, I can't tell the press what to say in their reporting tonight, but these folks who called, their only request was, in moving forward, please keep in mind us seniors who are on a limited budget. It sounds like the city has something in place to meet that concern and address those needs. Is there a way that maybe like what do you call it? That little thing you send out every month, the little utility thing.
City line.
City line. Thank you. Little thing. It was little. I mean, it's bigger now. So I guess would it be possible to maybe put something in there directing the seniors and low income folks where they could go? Because I think that would resolve the concerns that I heard. I didn't know to tell them that.
Well, so I think there's two pieces to this. There's one, the existing program that we have. I think Councilmember Bagley, what you also are referring to is there was something to look at the broader bill as a whole. And that is something we're going to do, but in terms of it being with this is just the water rate ordinance.
Right.
As we work this year, there's that other piece that we are going to be looking at as staff, but that's a separate action that we're going to look through as we continue moving forward.
Okay, so in voting for this, what I'm hearing is the city has something in place to provide some relief.
Right.
We passed this, and your understanding is that we have already addressed you to look for additional ways in which to provide for relief.
That's exactly, but in the broader bill, not just on the water and wastewater.
That's great. I can support that. And with that, I move ordinance 2015-09 and 10.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Councilmember Christensen?
As a senior with a limited income, I would like, I think it would be useful for the newspaper and also the city line to help people put this into perspective, because it really does sound onerous to have, 9% a year, but to have an explanation in the bill that we still have among the lowest rates in the entire Front Range. And that this amounts to, for instance, at my house, an extra $5 a month. That's, not so terrible. So if people could put it into perspective, I think it would be very helpful. Thanks.
Councilmember Santos?
Thank you, Mayor Coombs, and I would agree with Councilmember Christensen. I heard from just a few folks, 9%. Well, let's break it down for you. And I actually brought up my council communication and I actually said, okay, well, tell me what your bill says. And I said, well, this is what it would be if blah. Now, I have two young daughters who are going to be teenagers eventually here real soon, so I can see my bill just expanding. I'm on a limited budget myself. Independent business owner. So, but I think what it might be good in not relying on the newspaper is perhaps doing, editorial. Laying out from Dale and his teal tie. They always look nice. But just, again, not relying, some people don't even look at their city line, they just toss it. But perhaps something on the website, something on editorial in the Times Call, for those that don't read the paper,
we hear time and time again, well, I didn't know this was going to occur. You can try to educate everybody all at once, and sometimes you're going to get them, and sometimes you're going to miss them. So it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. But the best we try to educate, the better.
Mayor, Council, we definitely take that to heart, and I wanted to also let you know that is something that we're talking about in terms of how we actually talk about what we do and what it means at a different level. And we do have some folks working on different things. While it doesn't relate to this, we've already engaged in the conversations with regard to public safety. Sure. And how do we address some of those issues. So it is something that we are working on, and we will definitely work with staff in terms of getting that information out.
Thanks.
I'd also like to say that, even though we haven't taken a specific action on other means to lower like water rates in the future yet, because it's, something we've got a couple years to address. And there is options 2 or 3 years from now, perhaps when Windy Gap is built. And if those reservoirs get filled and we have a real wet season, there'll be water that we either got to lease or we got to spill. And so we have assets that this community can leverage and use to lower water rates in the future. And it doesn't mean that we're going to lease those to frackers or whatnot, but there's farmers need leased water, other municipalities need leased water. So there are assets that are on the table potentially in the future for us to leverage. And we would be foolish as a community to have these assets and not leverage those things that our citizens have paid for to reduce water bills in the future, I think. That's my personal opinion. But Councilmember Wilson?
Yes, and just what we found is that even doing some of those steps, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, and having, the asset means a lot to the community as well. One of the other one of the other issues we do have to remember is every single city on the Front Range is having to come into compliance with new EPA regulations. The Times Call had an article this week around Superior and Louisville deciding they might share going into agreements with each other, one that has a lot of capacity for treated water, the other that has excess capacity. They could share in building a facility for water treatment. So I really think that it's not just Longmont facing this issue. If it was just Longmont having increases in rates, I think as I think staff had pointed out, but not the dollars and cents that were noted in this article, over $23 million for a city much smaller than Longmont to increase their ability to do the service to their community. I just think that this is a very measured approach, which we always have recommendations from our staff that we're not Chicken Little with the sky falling immediately, but we plan ahead. And I really think that this is another example of taking that measured approach. And we're not going to have any real big surprises. We know what this 9% is going to get us, and you've done your homework on it, as we've had in previous presentations. So I thank you for doing that work.
I just wanted to add to that as part of the education, it's good to continually remind people that this isn't sort of fun money. Nobody wants to raise taxes, but we have to be able to maintain what we've built, and we're trying to replace the pipes from 1970. And we have to be able to maintain anything we build. So if we keep reiterating that and tying it to, it's not just a tax, or it's not just raising costs, it's maintaining what we have.
If I may just add one specific point is, for instance, in 2014, so our revenues were down $1 million. The water fund is a fund that is very weather dependent, and and over the years, it's a commodity that our citizens are using less of over time, but we still have large infrastructure that we need to maintain, and so consequently, what that means is that the unit price goes up over time. And, last year was not an extraordinary year for weather, but we undercollected from our single-family residential customers $1 million, and $1 million on a $12 million revenue stream has an impact over time. So, we're trying to take those weather fluctuations into consideration, but we think that this is the prudent thing to do.
Okay, I guess we've got a motion. It's been seconded. Let's vote. Okay, that passes 7-0.
Mayor Coombs, your last item of the night is the general business annexation referral request for 8939 Nelson Road, and Don Burchett is preparing to make a presentation.
Yeah.
Glasses. Good evening, Mayor Coombs, members of council. Don Burchett with Planning and Development Services Division, here tonight to kind of walk you through an annexation referral for, I'm going to be referring to the screen and the image that's up there to try to give some general relationship to the community. So first I'd like to talk about annexation referrals. As the council may know, but some of the people in the audience or at home may not know, City of Longmont has a different process in processing annexations than most. The way our rules are set up is that when a property would like to annex into the City of Longmont, the first step in the process for annexation is for the applicant to come in and meet with staff, give us their general proposal. We review that for just general consistency with the regulations of the state and try to point out any major issues if there are any. And then we bring that forward to the City Council for you to determine whether or not you're interested in considering the property for annexation. So what we're after tonight ultimately is for the council to let city staff know whether or not you're interested in considering this property for annexation. The applicant is here, or a representative of the Front Range Real Estate Partners tonight, and I'll let them walk through the detail of their proposal. But in general, the application itself is for a 9.5 acre site. It's outlined in red on the screen with a little bubble there that says 8939 Nelson Road. If I could figure out how to zoom in a little bit more, I would for you, but right now I'm going to leave it like that. In general, it's located in the west side of Longmont, just off to the left-hand side of the screen, and up to the top there is Vance Brand Airport that we were talking about here earlier tonight. Nelson Road is along its southern boundary, and then as you again head to the left, you have Airport Road, and then off to the right on the right edge of the screen is Hover Road. So it's about right in the middle between those two arterial streets. The property to the north and to the west of the site, as you can kind of see, is a RV and mini storage property that was developed by the Anderson family, and that is within the City of Longmont. And so that kind of gives you a general idea. There are residential developments to the south, and one of the properties you just looked at is also shown on the screen. We could have used the same vicinity map. But again, for context anyway, this is the area that we're looking at. The Longmont Area Comprehensive Plan identifies this property as industrial economic development. The proposed zoning of this property that the applicant is currently requesting would be business light industrial, which would conform to that designation on the comprehensive plan. This property is located within the airport influence zone. So anything that would be built on this property, we would be looking at adding the notes and restrictions to that property and including that in the annexation agreement. I think in general that gives a general description of the location, what you need to do tonight, and if the council's okay, I'd like to ask the representative to come up and kind of walk you through their concept plan and what they would like to do with the property so that the council has a good understanding of that. And I'll be available to answer questions after that if you like.
Okay.
Thank you, Don. Mayor, council members, I'm Paul Tihar, Front Range Real Estate Partners, and I am the managing member of the partnership representing this annexation referral. Don did a good job of explaining the surrounding area. This parcel, 9.5 acres, in the past has been primarily a horse equestrian center. And many of you who go back in Longmont know that a lot more than I do. I've owned it for almost 4 years and have talked over the last couple of years with staff about developing it. And the focus really has come down to the business light industrial. And in light of that, I've taken some land planning efforts to a level of showing buildings on the land parcel that's available, showing a proposed detention facility towards the north end. And the focus is really on smaller buildings to attract smaller tenants. And that seems to be not really available in Longmont. While there is a lot of vacancy right now, if you look at the vacancy, there isn't a lot of availability for smaller tenants. And so these buildings, if built like this, will be able to address that need. And that's really it. If you have any questions of me, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. This ironically addresses the previous point. By doing BLI, it's not residential. We do need the smaller tenant space, and I don't think we need a lot of debate on it. So you guys can though, and so I was going to actually move that we direct staff to continue processing the annexation application, and then bring it back to council when they're ready.
Second. All right, just one question. It looks like there's a stream or floodplain there. Is that any kind of issue being close to potentially as a floodplain? It looks like, or is that just a drainage ditch? It's just north of your property.
Just north is the Niwot ditch on a diagonal.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's on adjacent property. It is not on this parcel.
Okay. Yeah.
The Likens is up here.
Okay.
Is that correct, Dale?
Yeah. All right. Okay, we've got a motion. It's been seconded. Let's vote. That passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, close to the end. Okay, now it's time for final call. Public invited to be heard. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to come down and speak at this time? I guess seeing no one, I'll close final call. Public invited to be heard. So now it's time for mayor and council comments. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I have to do my business of the week, which I enjoy so much. There's a new business that I'm going to go check out very soon called Colorado Aromatics. They're at 340 Lashley. It is a farm-to-skin movement with all natural plant-based ingredients, Mayor, and it's for skin and in this climate, which of course is quite dry, and I'm sure we all need it. So let's go check out Colorado Aromatics at 340 Lashley.
Councilmember Christensen.
Okay, I'm recommending a movie for this week because in reference to it being Martin Luther King week, I saw Selma over the weekend with my son, and this was, I think, although there's been some controversy of how President Johnson was portrayed in the movie, this is something that was the background of my childhood and my teenage years, and it's a very powerful movie to show us the importance of the police force, good or bad, and also of persistence, and that we have come somewhere. We have come a long way. Thank you.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I usually don't make a comment, but I figure I've been talking enough tonight. Why not just keep going? This is going to sound a little strange, but you know what, Councilmember Levison, I just want you to know that I really enjoy working with you. And sometimes I know that council gangs up on you, and we exchange comments, you and I in particular. But I want everyone to know she's never gotten a glass of water without asking to get me one. And I believe that diversity in thought, not just culture, but diversity in thought is a valuable thing for any executive body, which we are. And so your different ways of looking at things, just because I don't always agree, doesn't mean that I don't really, really value your input and your voice. So I just wanted to make sure that last couple times we've seemed to be at loggerheads, but I just want you to know that when I'm talking and making those comments, it's out of love. I also want to point out she doesn't ask Councilmember Moore if he wants water. It's just me. Or do you get that? Okay, good. I guess I'm not special. She's just nice, so that's good. Thanks. Thank you.
Councilmember Levison.
You know, Councilmember Bagley, I live with someone that jettisoned a planet out of the solar system as being a planet. So, Council, I've got a thick skin when you live in a home environment like I do, you get used to having things be tough and have to make a good, cogent argument. Except that I really thought that my financial argument in calling the tax assessors to get the real numbers might help. That was initiative on my part because, I know you needed a little bit of, dollars and cents, but, I do appreciate having a more in-depth discussion around that issue because I think we need to look at fiscal sustainability when we're considering land use issues. And I also want to encourage everybody to look at Martin Luther King Day as not a day off, but a day on. And I also want to wish Bobby King, who is our outgoing Human Resources Director, I want to wish him well in his future endeavor. And I guess this will be his last time doing Martin Luther King ceremonies as kind of, he'll be in between jobs on Monday, I think. But I thank you for your service, Mr. King, and encourage people to go. The other thing upcoming on the horizon is the Colorado Municipal League legislative workshop is coming up in February. I think everybody has just gotten something from CML, or you might have gotten it in the mail. And then at the end of the month, February 28th, is a double header. It's the Chinese New Year celebration as well as the El Comité fundraising dinner. So lots going on in February. So Gabe, you're looking at the CML newsletter. What's that date? Is it February? Legislative 12th. February 12th, and then policy committees the next day. So it usually is going to be. It usually is a very good overview of what's happening with legislation, and we'll know a lot about legislation at that point.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So I've got a little bit of news back from National League of Cities as what their priorities are for 2015. Transportation is like their number one. Marketplace fairness, allowing states and local governments to charge sales tax is another one high on the list. Retention of municipal bond authority is another one that they're really pushing hard on to make sure that we don't lose that ability to finance our projects through municipal bonds, and as well as their tax exempt status. Policing, due to the issues around Ferguson and other places in the country, this is going to become a hot topic for them. As well as education. Improving our educational system is the way to the future. So ITC committee specifically, probably one of the big ones that really hasn't been discussed yet is over-the-top internet-delivered television. So the cable associations are pushing this, and I'm sure that if we let them have their way, it won't be good for most people. And E911, that's still not, that has been in the works for a long time. It's still not fixed. So Youth Council had their meeting tonight. Couple things coming up. They're doing Project Sticker Shock again. So they'll be coming to council with, to get support. And the Attaboys for last year, it was very successful. Longmont was the only city in Boulder County, I think maybe even the only city in Colorado that had that awareness program for putting stickers on packaged beverage containers, reminding adults not to buy for young kids or even older kids. They have a grant program where they have a certain amount of money they can put out into the community for youth-oriented activity. And the one they funded this year, one of them that they funded this year was called TERRA, Teens Ending Relationship Abuse. So this is, they had the pilot program at Silver Creek for a club, and they're going to move forward with that in the spring. They've reached 858 students with 32 presentations, and they're basically covering all of the St. Vrain Valley School District. And that is being sponsored by, I got to get this right, Safe Shelter of St. Vrain Valley. So that's a good program for them to spend that $500. And basically it was all the literature and the materials they need to actually conduct that programming. Coming up, the youth anti-vandalizing campaign, they're going to do videos. And they're going to have a video contest, $200 for first place, $100 for second. They'll need to go on the website and get the rules. I'd like to put this up in the Civic Center to remind people that it's going on. We're getting support from the parks and the police, as well as just the youth council. So I think if we move, this is kind of a little bit further out than I ever thought this would go, but people could turn in their 1 or 2 minute videos, and Channel 8 will edit them. And then I think the idea is to have a committee, including the mayor, decide who wins. So I don't know who that is, but anyway, so there again, the youth council is reaching out into the community, and hope we're doing some good things. So with that, that's all I have.
All right, well, first I'd like to remind everybody about the event on Monday at Silver Creek High School for Martin Luther King Day that's being put on, and I hope that people from the community have a chance. I think it starts at 2 o'clock and goes to 4 o'clock. Also, I'll talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions. Seems like this time of year, everybody, I don't know, I was swimming regularly. It seemed like in January, you'd have like 30 new swimmers the first week after New Year's, and by the end of that first week, you'd be down from that 30, would be down to 10, and by the end of the month, you'd be down to 5, and by March, you'd pick up maybe 1 or 2 new swimmers. But, you know, a lot of people really struggle with New Year's resolutions, and to make this easier, you know, if people would try to eat just a little bit healthier, eat more fruits and vegetables, you know, try to reduce the amount of sugars and fats and meat that you eat, you know, by a third or a half. But more importantly, just try to walk 15 minutes twice a day. If you just walk 15 minutes twice a day, that would do more to improve most people's health than, you know, any medication you could possibly take. So I just encourage people to try to get on a routine. Try to do something for 3 months and stick with it for 6 months, because once you do something in your life for 6 months, it becomes an ingrained habit, and it's not something, you know, it's a lifestyle change. So, you know, that's my advice for New Year's resolution is just don't try to become a, you know, a competitive swimmer or a superstar runner, but just try to get out and walk 30 minutes a day. And
you've inspired me to eat tonight.
So with that, sure, Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. I forgot to remind everybody, next Tuesday is open forum, which is the one opportunity every year people can come and spend 5 minutes, and we can actually dialogue with folks back and forth. And well, but we get to do it on camera, and all of us are there at once. So I think that we've had some very interesting folks come down and present to us, and I want to encourage everybody, young and old, to engage with us next week. And that way we can hear from you. And sometimes we get really good ideas that we put into action or suggestions to explore. So I'm looking forward to next week.
Okay, city manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City attorney, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.